Honestly, I fully believe in if you speak stuff into existence, like it'll happen. You know, I would say 95% of this industry or just anything in business is mindset.
Hey, it's Brad here. It's 2026 and you're still using a tape measure and grid paper to do your drawings. That's why I'm excited to tell you about today's sponsor, iGuide. With the iGuide Planix R1 camera and laser system, you can capture an entire home in about 45 minutes. All of your measurements, photos, and a detailed floor plan all at once. No hand sketches, no guessing, no more. Was that wall 10 foot or was it 9 foot? Or, oh man, I forgot to measure the window offset. You just hit start and walk away. That's it. You're starting the job with accurate as-builts. And you can export straight to DXF, DWG, or RVT files so you and your team can get to work immediately. Miss something? Well, you don't have to worry about that because it's all right there in virtual land waiting for you. This is how you avoid costly mistakes. This is how you reduce change orders. And this is how you run a tighter operation. And more importantly, it's how you protect your margins. If you're serious about operating like a pro in 2026, it's time to upgrade. Go to hammerandgrind.com/iGuide. That's IGUIDE to order your iGuide Planix R1 camera today and start running your jobs the right way. Hey, welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Brad, and today I have another very special guest with me, Andrew Nuhfer with AKN Interiors. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I've been excited to interview you and talk more about your business. Give us just a little overview of what it is that you do, and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So we are a design build remodeling firm here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We do kitchens, bathrooms, basements, and additions. All of our projects are pretty design forward. Every project has an interior designer, and those are the kind of projects we like to do. More detailed, more involved renovations, things like that.
Okay, awesome. And how long have you been in the business?
So we are about to turn the corner on year 4. So a little under 4 years.
Right at 4 years. Did you start the business like by yourself? Do you have partners? Like how did you get into starting the business?
Yeah. So I started the business on my own in July of 2022. So it was just me for the first few months. And then, I kind of always knew that I was going to need to start hiring people in order to, get anywhere. And now currently there is 14 of us as of today.
Awesome. Okay. So when you started then, did you do did you just start out like a all sub model? Did you have employees? Were you self-performing? Like how did you kind of start out?
So I started out kind of half self-performing, half subbing. So I came from a project management background. So I was a project manager for another design build company before I went off on my own. So I kind of already had a stable of subs to do, mechanicals and, some of the stuff that I really couldn't do on my own. And that's kind of evolved into how we do our business now. So we do self-perform a lot of carpentry. We do have a plumber on staff. We have a project management team, but we still probably subcontract 75% of the labor out on all of our jobs.
Okay. How many field employees do you have then?
6. And then we have one person their title is purchaser, but not only does she do all of the material purchasing, but she also does all material delivery. So that was a really, really great hire for us because it has eliminated all of my employees other than her making the Home Depot trips during the day, which, as you probably know, can be a real profit bleeder.
I remember the first time I realized this. We were doing this basement remodel, and it was outside of town, so it was a 30-minute drive, to the store, 30 minutes in the store, 30 minutes back, hour and a half, round trip. And at the end of the job, I was job costing, and I had like 25 receipts from Lowe's. And I'm like, holy crap, that's like 30 hours right there just in driving to the store. It's just a big realization. So does she actually goes and picks up materials and does material runs for the guys?
She does. So we have a pretty well built out system inside of JobTread where the project managers will get what materials are needed from the guys and then submit it into her schedule in a to-do list inside of JobTread, and then she goes and gets it. We started out as making her days extremely regimented, where we said, 8 o'clock, you go to this Lowe's, 9 o'clock, you go to that Home Depot. But now she's been with us about 6 or 7 months now, and she's really taken the reins and is kind of a lot more in charge of her schedule.
So she orders like all the materials for all the jobs that you're doing.
Correct. So I'm currently the salesman, and then I spec out all of the finishes with the designers spec them out, but I put them in the contract. And then once the contract's signed, it gets handed over to project management for them to handle the actual day-to-day production. But then she takes on all the materials. So everything from, pocket door hardware to tile to pretty much everything.
Okay, so she once you have the material list from the estimate, then she orders everything, cabinets, everything. If it's 3 weeks out, she orders it in advance. Do you guys typically like ship to site? Do you have a warehouse you bring stuff to? How do you handle that part of it?
We have a little bit of both. So we just moved into a 5,000 square foot warehouse that we're turning half into a showroom and then half into warehousing. So it kind of depends on when we need that material. We work here in Pittsburgh, so some of the homes do have garages, but not all of them do. A lot of the older homes here in town don't have garages, so we have to warehouse things. So we try to ship to site when at all possible, but we also can warehouse things, and that's, I think, a selling point with working with us that I tell our clients is, we are on top of materials.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, these are, this is kind of in the weeds, but it's stuff that people don't think about or hear about, having a purchaser that does that. A lot of guys are just like, hey, let's go to Lowe's, turn it into a snack trip and get some coffee and, a Snickers on the way at the gas station and make it a 2-hour endeavor, right? So you guys eliminated all of that, as well as, typically your project managers would order materials, right? If you don't have like a purchaser. And you've taken that off of their list, off of their shoulders. Does it help the project managers be able to do more projects that way, since they don't have to deal with that part of it?
I would say, yeah. Still at the end of the day, they have to make sure that everything's getting ordered, but I would say that they do have a bigger capacity to stay on top of things. We're really trying, and we've grown so quickly that we're still figuring this out, but we're really not trying to let them do more than 3 or 4 projects at a time, each project manager. But I would say, just coming from a background in project management where I was ordering a lot of the materials, when you're doing that and running 3, 4, or 5 jobs at a time, it's impossible to do that in a 40-hour work week.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So how many project managers do you have now?
3.
Okay. And then so you're doing, you said they do roughly 3 to 4 each. So you're running like 10 to 12 jobs at a time?
Correct. Yes. We currently have 15 active. A couple are like in punch out. A couple are due to start in a week or 2, that sort of thing.
Gotcha. And do you have, I know you do mostly, is it interior remodeling? Is that what I read? Or
for the most part, yeah. We do home additions as well. But we might do a deck or 2 a year if we have like a past client that reaches out and it makes sense. But most of the time, honestly, I can't compete with most deck builders price wise. So we only really get hired for stuff like that if the customer really only trusts us to do it and price really isn't the main motivator.
Right. I got you. You had, whenever you filled out your information, you said your average project's around 125,000. Is that about right? Yeah. Okay.
125 to 175, I'd say.
What types of projects do you do the most of?
First floor renovations. So kitchens where we're modifying the layout some, replacing all the flooring, painting the whole first floor, a little more than just a cosmetic pull and replace.
Gotcha. Okay. And so you have 3 project managers. Do you have kind of like one project manager is more of a specialist in this, or do you kind of break it up that way?
Yeah, to a point. So 2 of my project managers are a lot more experienced in interior remodels than additions, and then our one project manager, Jason, he has a new construction background, so he is currently. So we have one project right now that's at about 775. And he is doing that addition, and he's more geared towards, 4, 5, 6 month long addition projects.
Makes sense. Okay. So you have it, you have it broke up that way. I got you. Okay.
Yeah, as best we can.
You said you have an in-house plumber. You have that much plumbing to keep someone busy, a plumber busy?
We do. I would say he spends 75% of his time doing plumbing, and then the other 25, he just assists on other things. But to be honest, I mean, what we're saving in having it in-house versus subbing it out is well worth it.
Oh, yeah, for sure. That was one of my goals in my business. If I grew big enough to have in-house, electrician, in-house plumber, but you have to have enough volume, obviously, or you're going to start advertising for plumbing, and sending them out doing plumbing calls and stuff. So awesome. Yeah. Do you think you'll ever bring in an electrician, or is that something that?
Yeah, so actually my 2-year goal is to start a completely separate mechanical company. So in my opinion, the design build model really isn't scalable to sell, but a mechanical company is. So this plumber fell into our lap. But as I've seen what's possible, I would love to build out a plumbing, HVAC, electrical company that's a separate offshoot that will keep them fed with our projects to begin, and then kind of go from there.
Yeah, that makes sense. Absolutely. Especially if you have enough, I would say if you have at least 50% capacity in-house, to keep them busy, then you just hire out for service calls or whatever. I think that's a smart play, actually. All right. So back to kind of getting started. You said you started out by yourself, and then you made some hires. What was your first hire? What position?
So my first 3 hires were in-house craftsman, carpenters. And then my 4th hire was a project manager. So I knew pretty quickly that I have a background in finished carpentry. I've been a carpenter for most of my life, since high school. But I always knew that I was more valuable out with tools out of my hands. So I figured as soon as I could get someone that was skilled enough to where I could walk away for half a day and go do, things that'll keep the ball rolling. That's the people I hired for in the beginning.
We have a very, very similar background. I had a lot of project management experience, also finished carpentry. When I started my business, focusing more on finished carpentry type work, and then, hiring out. So it's always interesting to me because that's finished carpentry, it's just kind of a unique trade by itself, in the sense of the type of work you do. I mean, obviously you're either doing new construction, right, trimming out a house, or you almost always end up doing remodeling because there's just not enough trim carpentry work by it, unless you're doing custom built-in bookcases and that's all you focus on. But it almost always leads into remodeling. It's just always kind of an interesting transition.
Right. Well, it's hard. It's hard to make living as a finished carpenter, for a number of different reasons. But yeah, I mean, here in Pennsylvania, there's a lot of Amish. So the Amish have the finished carpentry trade pretty much locked in. So, you really have to get in with a subset of really high end builders as a sub, which I started out doing as a sub for a few builders when I first got on my own to do finished carpentry, stairs and stuff like that. But you just can't build a business off that.
No, I mean, you basically have 2 paths as a trim carpenter: decks or remodeling. That's your options, right? If you're going to do that in-house and self-perform. When I got into the finished carpentry, it was in 2009. So we trimmed out one house, and then there were no more houses to trim out, right? Because it was and so we switched into remodel. I was working for someone at the time, so we just completely switched over to remodel, and then never went back to new construction after that. So we were kind of forced into it. But okay, interesting. All right, so. What has been your success in finding and landing jobs, marketing perspective? What have you done that's really helped you land these clients?
When I first started my business, like I said, I was coming off the tail end of working for a number of different companies over the years. So, working in those companies in management roles, I was getting retirement funds funded by those companies. So what I did was about 4 or 5 months into business, I cashed my retirement in and paid for a stellar website. And, that has pretty extensive, SEO, backlinks, and all that mumbo jumbo. But essentially what my thinking was at the time, and it worked, was if I look the part, then I can speak like I am that person And then the jobs will just start coming. I'll be able to actually get into the rooms that, eventually people will hire us to do some of these jobs if I just act like we are the company that does these kinds of jobs. And that did, in fact, happen. And then from there, I would say that I put a good importance on getting finished photography from a professional. So early on, as soon as we started having, halfway decent remodels, I started getting them photographed and videoed by a videographer that I still work with to this day. And just kind of went from there. And then, like I said, just acting the part. Honestly, I fully believe in if you speak stuff into existence, like it'll happen. So it's, I would say 95% of this industry or just anything in business is mindset.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I like that you did that. And that's basically the same way I approached it, a little bit different time period as far as, what was available and things. You said you invested lots of money into a website. I mean, we talking like $5, $6, $7, $10,000 at the time?
I think it was 25,000.
Oh, yeah. So
25,000.
So you knew, or let me ask you this. How did you know that it was that important to invest in a website?
I would say that, so the company I was a part of before I went off on my own, I watched them have explosive growth, and it was all due to social media. So I saw that if your virtual presence is really dialed in, then that's what's going to be most important to bringing the work in. So I just kind of took a page out of their book, and I don't know how, but I found CGN, and I think I found them while I was still employed. And, one thing happened after another, and I got to talking with Logan, the owner, and got my first website. And they also built my newest website, which was a considerably more investment than the first one, but it's still a lot better.
Yeah, actually, I know Logan personally from CGN. I've known him for a long time. They do great. They do great work over there.
They do.
So you had a front row seat to like what a successful design build remodeling company looks like and all the things they did.
Correct. Yeah, I watched them go from 2 to 10 million in like 3 years. So now this was during COVID, but still, that stuff doesn't just fall into your lap just from osmosis. They did put in the work.
Yeah. So you literally just said, this works for them. I'm going to repeat it for myself. And you've had the similar success, right? With what you've done. I love that you spent that much money on a website. People listening to this would probably, they'd probably be shocked.
They think I'm dumb.
They would be shocked that like, oh my gosh, why would you ever spend that much? I can build my own website on Wix for free.
Yeah, I can vibe code it with Claude. Yeah, that's, you see the guys talking about that in these contractor groups, and not only with the website, but I think just with a lot of that really advanced technical things, like you're being penny smart and dollar stupid. Yep. Like, hire a professional, because that website has brought in millions of dollars worth of work for me.
Absolutely,
literally millions.
I like that, penny smart and dollars. I'm gonna write that down. I don't know if I've ever heard that. Yeah,
that's something my grandpa always said to me.
Your grandpa was a smart man.
He was.
All right. I may steal his saying. So, okay. You don't have it copyrighted, do you?
No, I do not.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, that's awesome. I was kind of on the same trajectory that you're on. I put a lot when I started my business. I approached it from I'm more of like a branding. I'm in the business of marketing and branding, and I just happen to do construction, right? And that's that mindset you're talking about. And
what book is that from?
I have no idea.
Yeah, okay, not important. I feel like I read that in a book somewhere. Sure. But yes, you're 100% right. Yeah,
I'm sure there's lots of books that talk about that. There's other ones that talk about, you're not in the construction business, you're in the customer service business, which I also believe as well.
Right. Yeah.
But I took a very hard marketing. So like when I started in 2010, nobody had websites. Only big corporations had websites. It just hadn't rolled out to individuals. And so like I actually built my first website using Microsoft Front Page, if you've ever even heard of that. Really, really old, just terrible thing. But I had a website, as crappy as it was, and nobody had a website. Like, I was the only one that had a website. So I was actually getting website traffic before people even knew that a website was important to have, as little as it was. And so that's first mover advantage. right? I mean, just first mover advantage of
Right.
being the first. I had like one of the first vehicles that were wrapped, first to collect Google reviews as these things were rolling out, because I've always been super tech savvy and like early adopter. But back to the website, you had enough experience with your with the company you're working for. They had a really nice website. You said, I'm going to go all in on this website. Yes, it's a big, it's a big risk, 25 grand is not nothing.
It's all the money I had at the time.
You
honestly,
you went all in all that, and it worked out. I mean, it helped you launch the business. I'm putting so much time on this because it's so important. Too many guys think that it's more of the field of dreams. Like, if I build my business, they will come, but it's not. It's like, if you build your brand and you market it correctly, then they will come. And those are two totally different mindsets and thought patterns.
Right.
Yeah. I think it's awesome that you invested that much money. I mean, and you went all in. I'm assuming your vehicles are all wrapped, uniformed guys, like professional across the board.
Yeah, as much as we can. I mean, like I said, I have been trying to look the part since we started the business. I would say we are the part now, but it took 4 years to get to that point and be able to do enough business to be able to afford all these things. I mean, the part that people leave out is all of the money you make in the first few years, you pump right back into the business if you want to build a brand that, is doing something.
Yeah, 100%. You have to put all of your effort into marketing your business in the beginning. And this is the part a lot of people miss, right? I mean, you would probably agree, if you hadn't bought that website, or maybe you just got a Wix one for, $500, you would not be where you're at today. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, I would say that comboed with the other marketing efforts that we made early on. Yeah, I would say, because it is not a dig against them. They may have different goals, but I have a few other friends that started businesses around the same time that told me I was nuts for spending money on the website and spending money on a photographer. And, we've had different trajectories. Not saying that they haven't been successful, but, just different trajectories.
Or a little bit behind you in terms of, growth. They may be on the same trajectory, but they're a little bit later or, slower than you because they hadn't had that level of clients. I heard something, I heard this the other day, or I learned it the other day, and this applies 100% to where we're at. And it is, if you focus on being better, then your clients will demand that you get bigger. If you focus on being better, doing quality work, marketing, if you focus on that, then you will have so much work coming in that you have no option but to grow your business.
Right. And that's honestly what's happened to us. I mean, my growth hasn't necessarily been super forced. A lot of it's just been like the right person at the right time has come along. Only one of my employees was somebody that filed an application. Like, most of them were all like personal relationships that found me, and then one thing led to another, and then here we are.
I just think that again, we could put our business and all of side by side, and they would be identical with how we focused on just being better, providing good service. When I first started, everything was we. Like, on my website, it was, we do this.
Yep.
I was the only one, right?
That is huge. Yeah. That is huge right there.
Yeah. It's like
saying that, us and we, and I've done that since day one. Said we, us, ours,
Yeah. It's you're kind of projecting that you're a bigger company that you are, not to be deceitful. I mean, you're not trying to, lie to people, but that's the goal. That's you projecting that, that right. goal. And, that can change the next day. Like the next day you could hire someone, and then now it is us. But it is such a subtle little thing. Too many people are like, I'm the carpenter. Look at me and how awesome I am and how great I am at a Craftsman, and I can build all these amazing things. And it's all about me, right?
Yeah.
But when you start putting the focus on the client and you start making it, why is it, what's the benefit to them if they hire you, then it shifts that kind of ego. Let's just be honest. There's a lot of ego in construction. There's a lot of pride. And I think that's a cripple for most companies who have that kind of ego. Would you agree with that?
Right. Yeah. Especially I've been around carpenters most of my life, like most of them thinking that no one can ever build or do things like as good as they ever can. And, that's all well and good. But if you can't like duplicate yourself, then you have a more high stress job that honestly, if you probably sit down and broke out the amount of hours you work versus your income, you'd be better off working for somebody.
Yeah. I mean, most people are working for like $12 an hour. Like if you add up all the hours and what they get paid, they're making like $12 an hour. They would make more money to go work at McDonald's than they do in their own business because they don't understand that concept of like, I'm the only one that can do it this well or this good, And it's funny because you're like, really? Like you're the only person on planet Earth that can do it as good as you. I mean, you think you believe that truly. And it's like, well, no, I mean, not the only person, but everyone that I've talked to can't do it as good as me. Well, maybe you just haven't found the right,
or I can't afford the person that can do it as good as me.
You just haven't found the right people, right?
Yeah.
And this ties into profit. So, a lot of guys like, I can't afford to pay someone 30, 35, $40 an hour that they're asking for. I just can't afford it. It's like, well, then you have a profitability problem in your business. You're just simply not charging enough.
Right.
So that you can provide the level of quality and service that the client wants, so that they're happy to pay you that, so that you have more profit, so you can hire better people.
Right. Exactly.
It's a cycle of that. And I'm assuming you've been able to hire top-notch people in your business.
Yeah. Yeah. All of my team is paid very, very well. I have a few that are paid into the six figures. All of my carpenters are paid well, I would say above industry average. Everybody has benefits. We have a retirement program. We have paid days off. We take off the week between Christmas and New Year's paid. That's just set in stone every year. Things like that. Like I'm not like, hey, I'll 1099 you. That way I can pay you $3 more an hour. I want to build a place that keeps the team together. I would say our company culture is really strong. And that's honestly the most proud that I am of anything is just like how well tight knit we are.
That's awesome. That was always really important to me, was company culture as well.
Yeah.
I had plenty.
Well, it shows in your work.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Hey, just a quick time out from the show. If you're a frustrated contractor who's dealing with low profit margins, stuck working on the tools every day, or doing free estimates for people who are never going to hire you in the first place, I invite you to my private contractor community, the Profit Club, where contractors just like you are adding 2 to 3 times more profit each year without producing any more jobs, and finally getting completely off the tools to never do another free estimate again. So if you're ready to increase your profits, stop doing free estimates, and get off the tools, then all you have to do is click the link in the show notes to learn more about the Profit Club and see how it can easily 2 to 3 times the cash in your pocket give you a proven sales process that will convert more jobs with ease and get you off the tools once and for all. And the best part is you can do all of this without having to produce more jobs than you currently are. Click the link to learn more. Now let's get back to the show. One of my clients, they were having a conversation yesterday in our community, and one of the owner's people, one of their employees, were cutting some metal for this project, and they set up the saw like right in front of the hedges and stuff, and so like metal shavings, in the bushes, and the client wasn't happy about that. I'm saying, absolutely, I would not be happy if my contractor was putting metal shavings. And so like, it may seem kind of silly, but that's a company culture and systems problem. That's not necessarily an employee problem.
For sure.
Yeah. Have you, how much time and effort have you put into like developing out your SOPs, systems? Like how extensive is that? Do you not do it at all? Kind of dive into that a little bit.
I would say not enough. Our production processes are pretty well dialed in. So we live and breathe through JobTread. Everything is pretty dialed in as far as that goes. Our schedules are tight. They're published inside of there. We do, all of our inventory, estimating, daily logs, clocking in, things like that. That's all pretty tight for production. We've grown so quickly that I haven't been able to put really a hard process in place, because that process is going to get remade in 6 months anyway. So, we're doing the best we can with that. We're definitely at a point now where we're figuring out our limits and starting to maybe hit some growing pains. But we've doubled year over year every year we've been in business. We've sold more so far this year than we produced all of last year already. So getting that figured out.
I don't doubt that at all. Yeah, when you're having that kind of explosive growth, it is hard to keep up with the changes. And they say, people say that for every 5 people you hire, it basically breaks all of your systems anyways. And you have to kind of redo that.
Yeah.
So maybe when you stop growing in terms of people, then you have a little bit more opportunity to kind of start dialing in some of those systems. Do you think you'll keep growing in terms of people? I mean, you're going to hire more crews, more carpenters, more project managers?
No, I don't think too more many. I think the long-term vision is to bring design in-house, which that is a process that that'll happen in the next few months, honestly. And then really what I'm looking to have my in-house people be are more the in-between guys. So I would like to basically have an all sub model, but my guys are project managers, and then the field guys are filling in here, filling in there, to where we're doing 15, 20 jobs at a time. And we have maybe 6, 7, 8 field guys that are the punch out guys.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, doing punch lists and little, cleanups and putting down plastic or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you have your guys set up? They all have their own vehicles. You have 2-man teams. How's your field team set up?
They do have all their own vehicles. One of my project managers does have a company vehicle. And then the other ones, they just have a gas card. So all of their fuel is paid for by us. I think it's one of those things we've been kicking around buying more company vehicles, but it's not really an appreciating asset. So it's one of those things. I don't know if it makes sense, but, all my in-house, carpenters, plumber, they all have their own vehicles and they have all their own little hand stuff. But if we, we have all the bigger tools that we need. And then, we try to group them up as much as possible, but sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. It really depends on the task. We don't really necessarily have 2 people paired up together at all times. It kind of really depends on what the projects call for. What I will say, though, is that we do have their schedules booked out pretty far in advance. So we know where all our field guys are going to be a month from now right now. So we do try to, keep that pretty tight.
So you kind of use your in-house as almost like a pool of talent, and then you just apply the talent wherever you need to on the jobs that are coming up.
I mean, they are each different, they are best at different sort of things. So one of them's a tile guy, one's a drywall guy, one's a framer. So we try to keep them doing those things if possible.
Right.
But they're well-rounded enough where they can do little parts of jobs. And then the more extensive parts like framing an addition or hanging 150 sheets of drywall, we sub all that out.
Yeah. That's, I ran into this problem too. So your drywall guy, he's hanging drywall, finishing drywall 60% of the time, maybe, and the other 40%, he's helping the carpenter, stand up doors, install trim. And it's kind of like that kind of scenario where they're not always doing 100% of what their main craft is. And people don't realize when you have to get to the level you're at to make that make sense when you're in between there. If you're only doing $1 million or even below that, it doesn't really make sense to have individualized people. And that's the hard part, is because a lot of remodeling companies, they're trying to find the unicorn in employees. They're trying to find the one guy that can do 6 different trades.
Right.
And it's that's not, most craftsmen at best are, they're really good at one trade, and then there are 2 or 3 other trades that they're not bad at. And then it just starts going down from there. And again, those are unicorns. That model just doesn't work. I ran into that problem a lot.
And they're expensive.
Because they typically can do more, right? They know their value. I ran into that problem because we started out doing handyman stuff, and then we switched over to also adding remodeling. And within the handyman side, it's even worse, right? Because you may end up doing 15 different trades.
Right.
And trying to find someone that can do that is it's too difficult. It's way too difficult.
Yep.
So as you're adding your field guys, you started with the carpenters, you said first, right?
Yeah.
And then you got to a point to where it makes sense to bring in a drywall guy or a painter or whatever. And you just kind of added those in as you built your business. Is that right?
Yeah. I would say all of my field guys, except for the plumber, were if you were to define their trade, you could call them all carpenters. I'd say most remodelers, the owners were carpenters at one point, and then most of the field guys are carpenters, and they're good at other little things. But like I said, they each have their specific trade that they're taught in, and they all have had remodeling backgrounds. So, they can do a little of this, little of that. But they're not skilled enough at everything where we could have a profitable company if we self-produced everything. We would have to charge so much that we would it would be really tough.
Well, that's the part people don't understand, is that you're so inefficient. The more trades you do, the less efficient you are. Right. And so, maybe you can do a bathroom remodel and you do everything, the tile, the drywall, the painting, the carpentry, but you're not going to beat out, as far as like painting, you're not going to beat out a professional painter in terms of quality and speed. No. Right. So they're going to do it in a day and a half. It's going to take you 3 days. And so this mindset of I'm saving money by doing it in-house is not really true.
Right.
Right. So then the submodel comes in, and this is what we did. We had a hybrid just like you. I had some field guys, and then I had, subbed out all the specialty stuff. And that's really the way you need to do it. If you're not big enough and you don't have enough, field guys, then you have to sub that out. Right. You just have to bake that into your price. Right. It may be a little more expensive to have a professional painter coming in versus in-house, but you put it in your price, you learn how to sell your value, and then you make money doing it.
Yeah. And it's just done. Like, you didn't send your carpenters over to paint a house. They screwed up. Then now it takes 3 times as long. You lost money when you could have just set the expectation from the beginning. Like, hey, these are our painters. This is what they're charging. I'm going to add what I'm going to add on top and send it out the door. Absolutely.
I recorded a podcast yesterday on time management. I had a guy commented on one of my podcasts, said, hey, can you do something on time management? I said, sure. So it's talking about time management. And one of this ties in here is like what I call VPH, or value per hour. So what's the owner's value per hour, right? You just take your revenue, divide it by the hours you work. It spits out, your value per hour. Obviously, if you start hiring project managers and salesmen, that changes that.
Yeah.
But if you're a solo owner, you're doing the sales, the project management, you got a couple guys, your value per hour is really high in your business.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're the one doing everything. And so when you're doing, like, one of my clients was like, he's in the same spot, like, he's growing his business, remodeling. And one day he was doing the plumbing in a shower, and he was there like all day doing the plumbing. I said, why are you doing the plumbing? He said, well, the plumber was like $4,000 or $5,000, and I can do it myself for much cheaper. Right. And that's that mindset of like, you are saving like money based on that math, but what about the lost opportunity cost? Like, if your value per hour is $200, right? Take that times 8 hours, you've lost money. But not only that, what if in that 8 hours you sold a $50,000 job, right? So that $4,000 savings actually cost you a $50,000 job. And when you start looking at it that way, you're like, holy crap, why am I doing all this? Why am I going to the store and picking up materials? Why am I doing all this stuff? You have to, as an owner, and I know you know this, but as an owner, you have to look at your value per hour to your business.
Right. For sure. I mean, I think I got recommended the book Buy Back Your Time probably maybe a year into business, and that really changed my mindset around everything. And it's the God's honest truth. I mean, I honestly, in my heart, if it was a perfect world and I could be as valuable swinging a hammer every day, I would be. I like working with my hands. I really do. But it's just, I'm more valuable, marketing and selling the business and running it.
That's the hard part right there. Going from a craftsman to a business owner, like truly making that transition. A lot of guys get lost in there because they feel like a part of their identity is dying.
Yeah.
Like, my identity is I'm a craftsman. And it's like, great. If you're doing some kind of like a super niche or artistic style, like I have a client that does wine cellars. Right.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That's super niche. Like,
right.
Yeah, you can be a craftsman and make a lot of money and have a life that you want doing that because it's in that. But if you want to grow a business where you're not on the tools anymore, you have to make that mental shift. You have to realize that, maybe your employees are not going to do it as good as you, right? Maybe they're not going to do it the same way as you. But what's more important, that you do all the work and it's like perfect in your eyes, or you leverage other people to do the work, and you're not killing yourself every day trying to do, 12 hours worth of work in a 10-hour day.
Right.
Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, you have to make that decision.
And I'm not going to say that customers don't expect high quality work, because they 100% do. But I think guys also get so caught up in their heads that like they're going to notice every single little tiny detail, that I'm the only one that's ever going to be able to figure this out. And like, no, your guys are good. Like, if even 80% of what you think your master carpentry is still better than what most customers have even seen anyway. So, let that go.
Yeah, I got Buy Back Your Time on my shelf right behind me.
Yeah.
I've read it too. It's really, really, really good. Yeah, I've talked about this before. It's like, this is where like we call the curse of knowledge. Like, if you're a carpenter, a finished carpenter, you have the curse of knowledge about how things are supposed to go together, right?
Yeah.
And so, to you, a 16th inch gap in trim is not acceptable, right? To a client, they don't care if it's an 1/8 inch gap. I mean, like they're not going to maybe notice that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm saying you should do that, but I'm just saying like,
I agree 100%.
Your level 7 of quality, like 1 out of 10, if you were to produce like a 7, is like their 10, like your client's 10,
Right.
Quality. They're blown away. But we are like, oh, it's a 7, it's not good enough, right? And I have to make it a 10. And that's when your diminishing returns come in, where you're just spending an extra 2 hours making it perfect, and your clients won't even know the difference.
Well, not only that, but also their number on that scale is going to be greatly swayed by their experience through the whole process too. So you could have done the most beautiful, wonderful job of all time, but if you pissed those people off and made it miserable on them, it's going to be a 1 every time. 2 years from now, they're not going to care about that miter that's in the corner. They're going to care that you destroyed their house. Or on the flip side, they're going to care that, hey, this was actually not bad. Like, yeah, they were expensive, but, we could live here the whole time. They let us know what was going on. They were honest. That's the stuff that people really remember down the road.
Oh, 100% experience, right? You have like product quality, and then you have experience. And experience far outweighs quality of product if you do it correctly.
Right.
And I think this is a part too where a lot of contractors don't understand this. They're like, why are you mad? Like, I just built you a beautiful thing. I mean, why are you mad that I was 30 minutes late? And it's like, because experience matters more than the quality.
Right.
If you're really, really, really good at experience, you blow your clients away with experience. You could get away with a 6 or 7 quality product on everything. And they're just over the moon.
Yeah.
But if you deliver a 9, 10 quality product and your experience is like a 4 or 5, it doesn't matter. Like, you've lost, right? It has to be. It's always a customer experience, and I'm sure you have that dialed in as well in your business.
Yeah, I mean, we always can improve for sure. But yeah, I would say we are getting better and better and better at it. I mean, greatly increasing the amount of touch points. We have not automated, but we have a scheduled follow-up system that we talk about early in the sales process. Hey, here is our remodeling journey guide that you get as soon as we have our first sales call that says we follow up this many times during our warranty process. And we actually do it. Like, we put it on our schedule in JobTread. People pick up the phone, give them a call and said, hey, it's been 90 days. How's everything going? Not only that, but, I would say leveraging JobTread throughout the whole project, where daily logs, those are huge. They take literally 1 minute. If you make it the standard, your guys will do it. When you don't make it a standard, they don't listen. So that's been a huge thing customers really love too, is that every day, we do a report of what we did on that project. I don't think they actually care necessarily what went on. I think they care that we are on top of it enough where we will photograph it and talk about it and publish it inside of their project every single day. So we're on top of it, and we're not trying to hide anything.
Yeah. For those that don't know, JobTread, like with the daily report, it goes into like the client portal, and they can see the report that your guys filled out. Right. And then any pictures that you add as well. So it's like complete transparency, of what's going on. And I agree with you. It's not that they care like, oh, you spent 8 hours, doing this task today. It's just that you documented this is what's going on and this is what happened. Again, it's that transparency. Yeah, that's huge. I can't even speak enough about how important that part is as far as the communication side of it. Some people are like, I don't have time, Brad. That's going to take an extra 15 minutes every day to do all that and take pictures and fill it out. And it's like, well, I mean, do you want to have more success or not? Like, it's not really optional,
Right?
like, this is, you have to make this almost mandatory if you want to get to like your level and where you're at in your business. Is there anything that you're doing that may be different than what others are as far as the sales process, or like that from first lead till like sign contract? Like, is there anything in there you feel like you're doing differently?
Yeah. So I don't put any pen to paper as far as actually defining a detailed proposal until money has changed hands and we have designed a project. So at the end of the day, I'm not looking to sell construction to people when I go meet them. I'm looking to sell a pre-construction agreement so that we can design the project, produce plans, get all the selections nailed down. I'll give them a range. I mean, of course, I'm talking about life-changing amounts of money every time I'm in someone's house. But, no one can define a $200,000 kitchen renovation without things decided and plans made. Some of these guys that compete against me that undercut me say they can, but call the people in a year and we'll see who was right. Probably ended up costing more than if they would have hired me.
But Andrew, clients are cheap and they don't want to pay. They don't want to pay what I'm worth. You ever heard that before?
Yeah, I mean, although some of them don't, but it's all a big package. Like if you and I by no means have this all figured out, but if you're looking the part and acting the part, then they see the value. And what you'll come to find out, at least in a lot of my projects, is that people don't necessarily have like, we have $100,000 and we will never spend a penny more. Like if you could say, hey, let us build the dream, let us figure it out. Are you comfortable in this range? We can get you there. But let's see how it turns into. Amazingly, people's pocketbooks automatically open up when they see something that they love.
It's funny too, because even if you throw out $125,000 estimate, and like, we don't want to spend that much money, you end up at like 110. By the end of the project, you're back to 125 or over, right? Because halfway through, like, we do want to have heated floors in there.
While you're here, hey, why not?
And so that's obviously that's some sales training, some sales skills. You got to understand that with people. But yeah, it's I always say that this is my kind of motto is like, it's not your job to find a price people are willing to pay. It's your job to find people that are willing to pay your price, right? And those are two totally different things,
right?
And a lot of times a lead comes in, it's like, oh, I got to sell this person. I have to sell them. Well, it's like, you don't even know if they're a good client yet. You don't even know if, they may just be needing another estimate for their insurance. And like, they have no plans of hiring you in the first place, but you're trying to sell them, right?
Right.
So yeah, I love that process you do. Do you have like have a phone call and kind of pre-qualify a little bit?
Yeah. So all of our leads get steered towards the website and then they fill out a web form and then they schedule a call with me. And then on that first call, I talk to them, make sure it's a good fit. And then if all goes well, then, we do an initial consultation. Sometimes those are charged, sometimes they aren't. It kind of depends on what's involved. And then from there, we'll send out a pre-construction proposal, which will say, to design your kitchen, it's 10 grand. And then we're expecting a project like this to land somewhere between 200 and 235,000, depending on selections based on other projects we've done recently.
You said something interesting though. You said all of your leads go through your website. Have you had any pushback or like leads drop off because you kind of make them do that process?
Well, I will say something. I would not recommend doing this, but in the past 2 years, my phone has gotten so blown up with spam and BS that I do have a phone number online, but I don't answer it if I don't recognize the number. And the voicemail says, hey, thanks for calling. It's actually my wife's voice. It sounds like a receptionist, but it says, hey, thanks for calling AKN Interiors. Please visit our website and fill out a web form to schedule a call. Now, I did just hire an executive assistant that's starting in a week, so she is going to start answering the phone, but I don't know if there's resistance. We're getting a decent lead flow right now from our website and doing okay. So I haven't really look that far into it, but I want to be in my zone whenever I'm talking to people on the phone. Like, I don't want to be blindsided while I'm driving down the road and they're like, hey, could you give me an estimate on this addition that's 750 square feet? Like, whoa. Let me look you up. Let me look up the house. Let me do some more digging. And, I want to make sure that we're going to be a good fit for you.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you 100%. I did the same thing. Like, and obviously there's levels to this, right? If you're still on the tools, one man show on the tools, like you shouldn't be answering the phone unless you don't have any leads coming in. Like if you have no leads coming in, every phone call is important, right? I mean, there's always levels to this. And so like early on when I was still out on the field or, you know, doing project management and stuff like that, I had a voicemail, said the same thing. Hey, sorry, you know, we're out in the busy, for faster service, go to our website and fill out our form, you know, directing them to the website. Yeah. There's one part here, like this is where it's tricky, is because once you've built a name for yourself, as you guys have, then people if they want to work for you, they will jump through more hoops in order to get to that level, right? So it's the fact that you make them go to your website, fill out a form that may have a bunch of questions, and then go through this process. Some people that aren't really like that motivated, or they're just looking for a price, they may fall out of the lead flow. But the people that want to work with you, like they're going to do it. And it is a pre-qualification process. The more friction you put in the way as leads come through, the better the lead is, right? And if you're not getting enough leads, then you have to remove a lot of that friction so that you can add more value through the phone. That's a scale. That depends on where you're at in your business. There is no like, you know, one size fits all. If something happened and like your phone just stopped ringing overnight and there's no calls coming in or whatever, you would probably change up your process a little bit, right? In order to meet that demand. So that's awesome.
Oh yeah.
Awesome. Andrew, I know we're getting a little long here. I always like to ask this question is like, what's a question I should have asked you, but I didn't? Something you feel is important to get across to people that might be helpful.
I would say that if you're a remodeler and you haven't made social media important, you are really doing yourself a disservice. I'm by no means saying that you have to be an influencer or anything like that, but I promise you that if you have a decent social media, I'm by no means saying mine's the best and I could be way better at it, but I will also say on the flip side of that people have hired us because they said, hey, we've seen your stuff on social media. We've been following you for 9 months and we really like what we see, you know. Social media is about planting seeds. You know, think of yourself as a farmer whenever you're on there. You're just going along, you're planting seeds. You never know what it's going to grow into. And the people that just sit back in the background and those that are just watching, not the ones that are commenting, running their mouths, those are the ones that are going to eventually buy from you. So if you keep being consistent and make it important, more important than one post a week randomly, or some crap that you just got out of ChatGPT with emojis, like, you know, that and having a professional website, like those two things go a really long way. And then I will also say that I've had different business coaching over the years, and that has also paid major dividends too. Absolutely.
Do you think you'll ever bring on like a full-time social media manager type person?
100%. I'm actively trying to find one. I just can't find one that will fit what I want. Exactly.
One thing you might try, and I don't know is doing internships with local universities.
That was something I actually have been looking into lately. I tried that last year, and what I found is that everyone that I was getting were blue hairs people, and you know, I have no political affiliation, but I'm sure you know what I mean. Like,
you don't have to say anything else. You don't have to say anything else. I had an intern here a couple of years ago from the university, and he was like a video major, like he wanted to make movies and stuff. But it definitely carried over, right? Sometimes you might get a photography major, you might get somebody that wants to get into social media or marketing, and the good thing about interns is like you don't have to pay them that much. You know, like it's a learning opportunity for them. But yeah, okay. Yeah, I that's something I'll also be adding here pretty soon as a social media. Because there's just so much. I mean, it is a lot. It is a lot to do social media. No doubt about it. You have to be very consistent. You have to be very intentional. It is a lot to hit record and then edit and do all this stuff. So
But there's so many tools out there now that make it really easy, and you don't have to overthink it. Yes, you should be posting nice finished photography sometimes. Carousels do great on Instagram, sure. But it also can just be you pulling your phone out, hitting record and saying, hey, here's what we're doing over here. Like, people overthink it too much. They're like, I don't want to be on camera. Like, no one wants to be on camera, but that phone in your hand is going to make you millions of dollars potentially. Like, think of it that way. And if you can think of it that way, then you'll make it important.
Yeah, that phone is a window. It's a teleporter into, wealth if you use it correctly. Yeah. That's awesome. All right, Andrew. I always like to ask this question too, and you kind of mentioned one earlier, but what's a book that you're currently reading, or one that you would recommend?
I would probably say The E-Myth is pretty great. Mm-hmm. That's probably been the most influential book that I have read. Recently I just finished Rocket Fuel.
That's a good one.
Any of the books from Mike Michalowicz, like Profit First or The Pumpkin Plan, those are great books. That's another thing too. Like, if you're trying to be successful, I'm not saying you have to be a nerd and sit and read all day. I don't actually read. I just listen to audiobooks. But then rather than like listening to Leonard Skinner all day while you're driving around in your truck, like turn on an audiobook or turn on a podcast. That's how I found Brad. Like, I started listening to your podcast a couple years ago, and I get a lot out of, I listen to you and a few others that are in our industry, little tidbits, and I'm just putting them together. And I always am trying to be learning, and I've passed that off into my team, and they are all now starting to all care about learning, and they see what happens. They see that, like, this is all a culmination of just little things that you picked from different people. None of my ideas are my ideas. It's just things I got from different people over the years here.
I mean, honestly, none of my ideas are my ideas. A lot of this stuff is just, repackaged. Right. A sales technique is repackaged into something else. Right. I mean, it's been around for decades, but you might have a different take or a different philosophy about something. But yeah, I call that windshield university.
Yeah.
Right. Like, when you get in your vehicle, you should be listening to podcasts, audiobooks, something educational.
Right.
Especially when you're going on road trips.
Yeah.
I love if I go on like a 6-7 hour road trip, I mean, that's like a whole book.
Right.
Both ways. You know what I mean? So awesome. Andrew, thank you so much for being on here, man. I know we have some information we'll put in the show notes, but if somebody wanted to reach out to you and just connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
You could always send me an email. So my personal email is andrew@akninteriors.com. My name on Facebook is just my name, Andrew Nuhfer. You can feel free to reach out to me on there. Our Instagram is @AKN_interiors on Instagram. So, reach out to me. I'm happy to talk about anything. And yeah, love to connect.
Awesome. The guys, we'll put those links in the show notes too, so you can get access to that. But, Andrew, thanks again for being on the show. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Awesome. All right, guys, that's the end of the episode. If you're looking for help in your business, I'm more than happy to do an audit of your business. You can schedule a free call with me. We'll take a look at what's going on. We'll strategize with the plan. We'll show you what you can do with that. And if you want my help, I can show you what that looks like as well. But you can find me on all the socials. Just search for the Hammer and Grind Podcast. And remember, until next time, profit is not a dirty word.